Good morning. My name is Helen Sherman-Wentz, and I am your worship associate for this morning. 40-some years ago, I had the good fortune to attend a luncheon in Portland at which Gloria Steinem was a speaker. She spoke about the importance of supporting our values financially and putting our money where our mouths are, so to speak. Her example has always stuck with me. She said, "If I were hit by a truck tomorrow and someone found my checkbook, what would it say about my values?" About 25 years ago, when Boone's Ferry UU congregation merged with Atkinson Memorial Church, I saw for the first time how dedicated and determined the congregants of Atkinson were. They were largely elderly, longtime members who loved this community and this beautiful old building. They gave what they could financially and supplemented that with many volunteer hours maintaining this building. In fact, a group met weekly to do the necessary work. They were determined to keep it operating. I learned that old men frequently went on the roof to make repairs long past when I would have thought it was safe for them. And when Jerry spoke this morning, he talked about sort of the heyday when our church had 750 members in the 50s. That's a lot. When we merged, it was the late 1990s, and it was really down, a very small number. But my goodness, they kept this place going. I have often thought about those people who went before us. Their dedication enabled us to have a beautiful place to gather and worship today. I am grateful for the gift they gave us and enjoy it whenever I am here. I really do think about them from time to time and what they did for us. Some churches expect members to tithe, to give 10% of their income. I would resent a church that told me how much I had to give. Well, I actually wouldn't join it in the first place. My husband and I are more than anyone else knows how much we can afford. In fact, in that respect, we're like public radio during pledge drives. We get to decide how much we can afford to give based on our income and also partly on how important it is to our lives. And if other folks can't afford to contribute right now, the rest of us carry them until they can. I want to look to the future and ensure that our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren have the opportunity to gather in a community where they feel they belong and where they have a spiritual home. This church community is very important to me. This community is my community. I have come to see giving to this church as a privilege. It's a way that I can be sure my values are carried into the larger community. It ensures that I will continue to have a place where I can grow spiritually, a place where I can work together with other people, a place where I can find support when I need it. Does the time and money we put into our church reflect our values? Just a second. Throughout our lives, each of us have differing means of supporting our church and the work that it does. For some, it's financial. For some, it's volunteering. For some, it's financial and volunteering. How do you support our church? With money? Wielding hammers or paintbrushes? Telling your friends about church? Teaching our children? All of these are important. And yet, in the end, cash keeps the lights on, pays our staff, and pays for the roof to be repaired. What does your checkbook show?
Peter Drucker, author of Managing the Nonprofit Organization, writes, "The nonprofit institution neither supplies goods or services. Its product is neither a pair of shoes nor effective regulation. Its product is a changed human being. The nonprofit institutions are human change agents. Their product is a cured patient, a child that learns, a young man or woman grown into a self-respecting adult, a changed human life altogether. Well, this is the time of year when this Unitarian Universalist Church and many others launch their stewardship campaigns. Marcia kicked this off last week with her wonderful sermon, Roots and Wings, which not only reminded us where we came from, but why this church and this community is important, not only to Clackamas County, but also to the wider Portland area. Now it's my turn. And here I am, your intern minister, only having been here for the last 6 months, charged with inspiring you to give at a sacrificial level for our annual pledge campaign. This is a daunting task. How am I, so new to your congregation, going to reach you with this important message? I think I'm in a unique position to speak to you about this, as my first career has been as an accountant with a wide range of experiences with individuals, small businesses, corporations, and for the last several years, not-for-profits and churches. I've served as treasurer for our church in Pasadena, California, for 7 years, and I'm currently the treasurer for the UU Trauma Response Ministry. Yes, I was a church treasurer for 7 years. That position is not easy to fill. That's why my tenure was so long. And frankly, I liked the work, so I kept saying yes. I like working for not-for-profits and churches, seeing how money serves the mission. Now, if you'd known me as a child, you'd be surprised and somewhat gobsmacked to have found me spending my life working with numbers. I loved stories and performing. I couldn't see any use for math and always figured that I would hire somebody someday to just handle all that nonsense. I remember that my 5th grade teacher sent my math book home with me over the summer so that I could do some additional math drills to sharpen my skills. I was not happy about this. The title of my textbook was Arithmetic We Need, and under that I wrote, like a hole in the head. My 5th grade self would not have believed that I happily spent my adult life working with numbers. But I discovered quite early, especially with my individual clients who had hired me to handle their finances by paying their bills and helping them get out of debt, that numbers tell stories, and the stories are there if you look for them. How you spend your money tells what you value, and especially where some will turn wants into needs. I was paid to tell people the hard truth and to make recommendations knowing that they made the final decisions, and what I thought was helpful mattered little in the final analysis. But the same held true for our churches. I can see the stories as I look at the financial statements, especially if I look back over the years. Numbers tell a story. Sometimes it wasn't the story the church wanted to tell. Numbers tell me so many things. Sometimes we're unaware of the story it tells, and sometimes the story it tells is one we hope no one else will see. I learned very early to read into what I was seeing and to relay that to decision makers. I would ask them if that's what they were seeing and what they thought their funders would see when they looked at their financials. I must say that most of the time, the heads of the company would be taken off guard and didn't know what to say to me. I wasn't trying to win. I was trying to get them to a decision point that their finance persons never broached with them. Individuals whose money I was handling revealed early where their weaknesses were. Some single mothers could justify any extra expense when it came to their children. Some small businesses would make a case for new programs and extra advertising, even though they knew that this same campaign had not yielded more income and business in the past. Churches are a special entity, as they cannot project increased income on the members they have or the new members that may come in. Membership projections are hard. We are all dependent on what you have pledged in the past and looking at that continuing in the future. Now, we know that some of our members and pledging friends will have changing circumstances. Some move away, or they let us know they'll not be able to pledge at the levels they have in the past. This can give all your leadership pause as we try to imagine what that will look like down the road and how we'll have to adjust the budget we're trying to create. Building a budget takes faith. 70% of our budget goes to pay our staff. Most of our other expenses are fixed. Our mortgage, insurance, dues to the UUA, our utility payments. There is almost no fat in our budget. If we don't meet our goals, we may need to cut staff positions, and absolutely no one wants to do that. Our volunteers are crucially important, but without our paid employees, we don't have Sunday services. We don't have religious education. We don't have Zoom. Our staff are the folks who make sure the church keeps running, keeps providing this place for community and connection and service. No one wants to cut staff, but that may have to happen if we don't get the pledges we need over the next year. Money is a spiritual issue with churches. Many of them ask for contributions all the time. UUs don't do that, as a rule. Now, in evangelical Christian churches, all money is considered God's. We are only stewards of those funds we have. I think this is an intriguing idea, only in that it would change my perspective if I felt that I was responsible to handle my money well and would be accountable for how well or poorly I did that. But accountable to whom? Christians are accountable to God. Well, I don't believe that, so I'm only accountable to me. When my husband was alive, we were accountable to each other. In this church, your board, executive team, and staff are accountable to you, and we are all accountable to a higher good. And I've heard all of them make thoughtful decisions about how and when to spend the money you entrust to them. This is the sermon that very few of your ministers look forward to preaching. After all, we're asking you for money. In most of our churches, the minister's salary is the largest single expense, so it can be awkward to talk about it and can feel self-serving. We aren't trained for this. Not one of our seminary classes teaches us how to approach a congregation to address the annual stewardship campaign. I find that appalling and mean to speak to somebody about it. This in a culture where no one talks about money and no one tells anyone what it is that they make for what they do all day long. Why is that? Why are we so secretive about what we make and how we spend it? I know that some are reluctant to talk about what they earn as if it may seem like they're bragging, or worse, they might find out that what they make is somewhat paltry in view of what their cohort are making. Money is an interesting subject. There's a lot of secrecy, emotion, and mystery surrounding it. I'm not sure that's good, but I have to recognize that it's what most of us are dealing with. But let me tell you what is real here. The income this church has to pay our bills, pay staff, and fund programs comes totally from your pledges, cash donations, any fundraisers, and our rentals. We're grateful for the cash in the plate. It allows us to be generous to other worthwhile organizations, but it does not fund the budget or pay the bills. There is no money that comes from the UUA. That's part of our congregational polity. We, this church, is an entity unto itself. Although we belong to the Association of Congregations that make up the UUA, we are totally responsible for paying our own bills. If you look at our budget, you see very little that's extraneous. What I'm seeing here is not out of line for other churches, and then there is the need to maintain this building, this wonderful, historic building. There is deferred maintenance here, but then again, there are very few churches in this country that don't have some level of deferred maintenance. You are so fortunate to have the dedicated volunteers who are spending their free time either determining what needs to be fixed right away and what can wait, and then helping to supply the labor to get it fixed. I've learned that the facilities people here in the past maintained this building on as little money as possible. That was such a gift for all of you, but it gave us a false sense of security. This could not continue. Thankfully, your dedicated treasurer, Hal, is leading a project to determine the useful life of all of our systems. This will tell us how we need to plan in the future to replace major assets like heating, electrical, plumbing, and a roof. I'm so impressed with the level of devotion of your leadership. They really care about this congregation and have spent countless hours thinking and worrying about this building and our budget and wondering how we will manage the money if that doesn't come in. Honestly, if every member and pledging friend pledges $2,500 for the next year, we could fund every line item in the budget. $2,500. We know that not everyone can do that, and some pledge more, and we're so grateful. Between your finance committee, the board, treasurer, executive team, and staff, and all of you who take the future of this congregation to heart. The pledge drive ensures that we have a community that thrives into the future. We gather not because anyone tells us that we must, but because we have found a community that helps us live our values. I know that this church community is important to you and your families. I hear parents that are so happy that their children have found their friends here and that they look forward to coming to church. I know that you do too. I see so many of the same faces every time that I'm here. I personally appreciate that you're a teaching congregation. Your willingness to host intern ministers ensures that the ministry will thrive and survive. Your pledge is a statement. It speaks to your confidence in the spiritual community and that its place in your world is important. What we do here matters for all of us and the wider world. It's your way of saying yes to all that is good and nurturing in this sometimes scary world. The beloved community starts here at Willamette Falls with this important and vital place. Amen, and may it be so.